right, policies. This is what GAMS has drawn regarding the fuel subsidy. And of course, he was the president cooking an omelette there, looking at that editorial cartoon. Now he's got to wipe the egg from his face as far as the fuel subsidy is concerned. And this is what we are actually discussing right now. He has been very categorical that this is not a fuel subsidy, but it is a stabilization fund. And this is where Patrick Obath is making it limpid for us as well. You say it's not really sustainable. Shem, we were waiting for you to continue because on the other side of a break, you had to chime in.
Yeah, Debal, I was just trying to bring the angle, a concern of one of the viewers who was saying, how come people's cattle discussing matters that are being driven by IMF, that perhaps there needs to be more public participation when it comes to matters of to what extent does government have to listen to IMF decisions or policies. I think it's normally like a live wire. I'm no expert in that regard. I think Patrick, and this gentleman happens to be a former colleague of Patrick, Engineer Julius. So at least Patrick on the panel has addressed that issue of fuel, but I think the premise he's making is that there needs to be more public participation on policies that are being brought by the development partners. In terms of export of food, the BAL, I think we thank God there is a bumper harvest.
We'll come to the export of food later, but because I wanted to latch on still the issue of the fuel subsidy and the IMF. And Patrick, because we've had also the African countries raising queries on the Moody's and the Fitch ratings, and we had yesterday from UNCTAD, they gave a press conference regarding the debt of Africa, that we need this relief. But we discovered that the rates that we were given as Africans and the US, it is 8% more to the Africans. We pay more, right? So this issue that he's asking regarding public participations, especially in his policies, while we having unfair ratings in one side of a constituent, to the Africans it's differently. We've seen this also with medicine. When it comes to HIV, ARVs, there's a specialized sort of ARVs for the Africans and for the whites. So there's sort of a racism that really comes in.
No, you are more riskier.
I'm more riskier.
Yeah, I'll put a premium. Yes.
But we need to broach this issue of the ratings. So since it has been raised, not only just by the country, but also the African leaders are saying, no, the ratings that we get from Moody and the Fitch and the rest of these agencies need to be scrutinized because we are disadvantaged.
Just like everything else, the world is changing. The way business is happening is changing. And these rating agencies have kept the rating mechanism for, I don't know for how, forever. The definition of risk, say 20 years ago to today, has changed. And the things you put in the risk basket are different. African governments were seen as risky because of the way they're constructed. Now, African governments work. African states develop. Now, the definition of risk is seen by somebody else looking at Africa, rather than by Africa defining what it considers to be risk or not risky. So until you begin to go back and deconstruct this definition of risk, those rating agencies will be the same, because I think they really haven't changed the definition of risks from the day they started doing it, because that would require a complete shift in the way the rating agencies work. Moody's, whatever it is, and all Standard & Poor and everything else were meant for economies of a certain, constructed in a certain way. But Africa was seen as a big dark box with initially those military coups, there was whatever it is, all these things became the definition of the risks in Africa. And those, I don't think, have really changed. And until we go back and ask Standard & Poor, Moody's, all these guys to say, redefine how you look at risk in Africa, we are going to be, we're going to come out at the same level.
But even Patrick, you're spot on. Let's say, for example, we go to the IMF, whatever, Niger is there, and Rwanda is there. I'll even take two African countries. We take $50 million US. I'll be very careful with Niger. Seriously, I would.
Yeah.
And why? It's our own creation.
About Niger.
Niger, sorry.
yeah.
Niger. It's the same creation.
Nigeria in Sheng is a different.
and it's a whole concept. You look back in terms of what you have been discussing here, the transaction, the corruptions in these areas, so that if we advance a certain amount, but how sure am I that KIP will put it to use to generate wealth? Now, and this is what we need to be extremely careful, and it's going to hit us hard. Even the point you're bringing, and look at what happened in Uganda. The World Bank has suspended because of the issue of the gays. Is this something now for us now to be having next time when you get to these institutions? It's actually a condition that you must address the issue of gays and lesbians if we are going to provide you support. And it goes to what Museveni said. And this is what, as African country, what we are talking of agro-processing, minerals we have, can we put our house into order? And this is how we can develop. The people who are bringing conditionality. So what are you telling the small kids? That this condition, no, we are encouraging lesbians and all this. So there's something we need to think about. And this is, I suspect, the African countries which are going to bring that into law, the Bretton Woods institutions are going to bring this condition in it, which goes to exactly what you're talking about here. Do we need this kind of rating? Unless we address our fundamental, the pending bills we are talking about, unless we address the idea that what is all this about the levies?
So do we ask, maybe also from the African Development Bank, we don't have any rating agency that it's purely African, that we can actually compare and contrast and say this is
the biggest shareholder
and the features
in
of what is given.
Bank?
You know,
who is the majority shareholder?
Yeah, who are they?
You're
held by ABCD.
Now it's
Nigeria.
I think there are two conversations that we are having here. One about values and who we are and what we stand for. And that's where we alluded to President Museveni and his position on the LGBTQ2 issue, which I support, for the record. But we are also having a conversation about...
What do you support? The law or...
I support the stand that the president has taken.
That
we must uphold our cultural
I got you right now.
Correct. And we also need to look at ourselves in the role that Africa plays in the global economy, and we cannot ignore the fact that capital is capital. And in that equation, I know that Africa contributes 4% of global trade and 2% of global investment. And so you see, unfortunately, we cannot run away from these ratings that are imposed upon us, because these ratings also speak to the whole conversation of mobility of capital. The good news, and I'll now speak on a micro perspective, the good news that I have for you now is that last week, the FTSE Russell Index has removed Kenya from the list of countries that are risky to invest in because of access to dollars. And congratulations and kudos to the government of President Ruto, because in the 1 year that they have been in power, the period and the access to dollars by foreign investors has reduced significantly. And if you look at the market over the last 1 month, we are starting to see an inflow of foreign investors, which also attracts FDI. And Kenya, took a bold step in 1980 to free its foreign exchange regime. And countries that are even bigger and stronger than ourselves, like South Africa, have never been able to take that bold step, notwithstanding the fact that they have a very strong mineral resource backed economy. So what am I saying? And we are now waiting for the Morgan Stanley Frontier Market Index, which I do hope will also vindicate Kenya and put us in a better stead. So generally, what investors would like to see is an economy that is predictable, where they can invest their money, and the access to dollars should be like a loaded gun. They should be able to say, if they want to sell Kenya and buy Vietnam, they should be able to move that money today out of Kenya into Vietnam. If they want to move that money from India to Nairobi next week, then they should be able to do that without any delay. 6 to 9 months ago, we had some investors unable to repatriate dividends for between 6 to 8 months, to periods of 6 to 8 months. That is 6 to 8 months too long. It should be 6 hours after the sale decision, if you ask me, at the very latest. So I think the measures that the government are taking is amazing. and it's excellent. And obviously, the whole question about dollars, and I think it's a conversation we need to have.
He did.
I mean, the sliding shilling is a great source of great concern. I was in Zimbabwe recently, and I challenged the Zimbabwean business community at the Chamber annual event there. I challenged them and said, why don't you want your own currency? And they've actually completely taken their minds away from the fact that they could have their own currency, notwithstanding the fact that they are a sovereign. And we are seeing a similar trend in Kenya, where now house rents are being determined in dollars.
Yeah.
People are moving away from our currency into dollars.
Into dollars.
So we need to do something to bolster our shilling.
Happening in Tanzania as well. We can see there the headline shilling is hitting all-time low against the dollar. The continuous weakening of the Tanzanian shillings against the dominant but scarce US dollar has reached record levels, it says, with economists pointing to tougher times ahead as the government looks for countermeasures. It's not very clear on my end. There are 6 countermeasures, it says. But the question is, even as you're talking about the dollar, I wanted just to chime in and ask the question of India right now paying for the oil from the UAE in rupees. You can see there's a de-dollarization even now. When oil was really pegged on the dollar, things are happening around it. India is part of the BRICS. We'll be having a summit. Ethiopia is seeking to join the BRICS. And I wondered why Ethiopia will opt to go join the BRICS instead of even just joining the East African community. In this particular, is that really speaking of the mistrust or shame?
I think for me, for Kenya, maybe the aspect of de-dollarization may be a bit premature, but there are other ways, in my view, to look at it. Obviously, and when we talk about Tanzania shillings,
so you're talking about
10
in respect
years
to the diaspora, because there's a diaspora interest
not
as
really,
well.
not really.
I need to first of all,
okay, maybe in that regard, now that you bring it, the bar.
I thought you said you'd be charging
There
him
could be the
for-
diaspora, yes.
If you type diaspora, you charge him.
Actually, it is making me mention when I was not telling you. But I read somewhere also with pleasure that from tourism, our earnings for the past 6 months have grown about 30% to 150 billion shillings, if I got the figures right. But obviously one may say, in that same duration, how much has the Kenya shilling depreciated against the dollar? Is it that it's just that we earned $1 billion the same time? But that's maybe a conversation for another day. What I was trying to advance was that about 10 years ago, I think EAC heads of state did pass this monetary union, EAC monetary union. I don't know why we are not bold enough to implement it, because really when we are buying, knowing, and I think Kip could correct me if I'm wrong, our major trading partners being, say, Uganda and Tanzania, why do we have to pay Uganda in dollars when we buy from them, and vice versa? Why do they have to pay us in dollars? Why don't we pay them in Kenya shillings and they pay us in Uganda shillings or Tanzania shillings? And in this regard, we would not be, in my view, rubbling any rousers because this is something that our heads of states passed in the monetary union. We would only be implementing it. I was talking to some business friends leading African-American business people, and I was saying, look, perhaps this is an opportunity that the U.S. could take to even endear itself deeper to Africa by saying, look, can we facilitate Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania trading in their currencies, but still backed with the dollar? I understand maybe the economists could enlighten us. I understand there's a way in which it can be backed, but you actually do transactions in the local currencies. But while on that, Debal, on the aspect of IMF and the global trading system, there is no doubt it's tilted against Africa. It's been for the longest. So even though we are a small actor, 2%, 4%, as Kip is saying, we cannot run away from the fact that historically it's been unfair to Africa. But what's the good news to the world? The good news, in my view, and I think President Museveni brought it out very well, that if we, instead of selling raw products, we sold finished products by value addition on the continent, Africans would have more buying capacity. We are talking of a market, I think it's now 1.3 billion people. So we would have more power to buy even those products and trade with the rest of the world. Besides, we wouldn't be seeing many of our people dying in Mediterranean Sea looking for better pastures. So in terms of making the level playing field, I think it's in the interest of not only of Africa, but the world. Lastly, in terms of power, somebody just gave the accurate figures.
No, I think we'll be all over the map. So let's just go systematically. If it's dollar power, you'll actually highlight it because you passed that junction.
Thank you.
I want
the answer about this issue of the East African community and having one currency has always been
in the pipeline.
The experts who are trying to determine how you are going to convert and to which one it's going to be. Is it going to be pegged on the Ugandan shillings and then all the others adjust to it, or the Kenya shillings or the others adjust to it? It's all the experts are there who has been arguing, and national positions are taken and everything else. So the president said do it, but the experts are saying how do you do it? And that is what is. And that is how long it has taken.
I thought you would use your word implement.
Yeah.
Execute. Execute.
Yeah. I always believe in this thing that people say, you fire then aim.
And then aim.
You fire then aim. Yeah. And the East African community was created by firing first then aiming. Yeah? Because the president signed on and said we are an East African community. Then all the other things are now being done below that. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think even this issue of having the common currency,
we
should just do it and then let everything happen below that.
For almost 10 good years we've been talking about it.
Aim below that.
But I think there is now a target of 2024.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the BRICS, Debal. You mentioned the BRICS as the benchmark. And, the BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, and China.
Yes.
And if you look at all these economies,
South
Africa, all these economies bring something to the table substantial. I mean, if you look at Brazil, they've got a lot of oil resources, got coffee resources. They're controlling 20% of global coffee production. You look at Russia, their mineral strength, their gas, natural gas. You look at India, the service and their industry. You look at China. You look at South Africa. So all of them are in a position where they can go to the table and barter their commodities outside the dollar. And I think it's an interesting new dynamic, and I think it's something that needs to be explored so that we are not all captive to a currency. But then coming back home, and what is it that we take to the table? And I think as a country, there's a lot that can be done. And I think we are starting to take those baby steps towards actualizing those dreams. I will not want to finish this show without talking about agriculture. This is a potential agricultural powerhouse. It's a sleeping giant. But then we are still, playing politics on agriculture without actually going into the serious issues on agriculture. And, if we look at, for example, coffee, today we are producing a very small proportion of our coffee globally. And of course, there's a lot of steps that are being taken to see that there's more money ending up in the hands of the farmers. But I think for me, the real conversation should be on productivity. How can we ramp up our productivity? Today in Kenya, we are producing 2 to 3 kilos per tree in coffee. In Colombia, it is 20 to 30 kilos per tree. What is it that we can do over these 10 years or 15 or 20 years that can actually make us have the commodities, have the products that can allow us to go and even barter them globally outside of the dollar?
And even, I think, talking about coffee, we had the resumption of the coffee auction. Yes, and it has not stimulated any interest at all.
That is window dressing.
It's window dressing.
Yeah, and it goes to the point. It goes to the point. You can say anything.
Why are you calling it a window dressing?
You can say anything, but what?
How do you have a coffee auction without coffee?
But then why then do you open the auction?
I think for me we are missing the point. You see, fine, it's good to start to advocate for more money to be in the hands of the farmer, and it's the right thing for the government to do. But what are we doing to productivity? We are still. I'm a coffee farmer, and I can tell you with no fear of contradiction that all the things that I've done on the Shamba have been with not one single, technical advice from government, no capital support, nothing. But if you look at all the great agricultural economies, all the great industrial economies, if you go to India today and find out why they became an industrial giant, it's because they got patient capital, not 2-3 year capital. You need 20-30 year capital, and say these are the things that we are going to manufacture. This is the patient capital we are going to get. The returns will be in 20 to 30 years from now. But if we start to say we want to borrow at 14-18% and you're going to pay this year, there's no industry you're going to create. So and the same applies to agriculture. I mean, if we don't today, I don't know what the per capita milk production per cow in Kenya is, but I do know it is below 10 liters per cow. So the reality is the majority of the cows in this country are actually pets.
But,
I mean, from an agricultural production.
But keep with all due respect, and you are forgetting what kind of nation we are.
Yes.
And it's very easy for me to sit here and shout, but the reality is, the investor, the person producing, has information. I will respond to the information, not what you tell me, how the industry operates. So we can shout. Now, the fundamental question, the BRICS, good idea, but we need to address why is the dollar particularly hitting so hard with African currencies? What's the fundamental behind it? It's a very interesting question, and I'm really challenging the guys. Why is the dollar so strong to the African currencies as we talk? If you look at the dollar to the sterling pound or euro, they're very, very stable. What is this in our economies we are not doing? And the issue, if you look in terms of most African countries, it's like, what's the word? It's sexy to import things. Even fundamental things you can do, like eggs. And when you import that, you're actually importing the currency you use. It's not like Kenya shillings or Naira or Bila. And unless we address that fundamental as African countries and developing economies, going to BRICS or whatever is not going to change the narrative. And to my understanding, that narrative has to come with our own economies, ourselves. And I like the point Kip has been raising. And then if it's one thing, I know we share many things with him, but if there's one thing we strongly share, is that food production. Food. Concentrate on that.
Thank you. So we had also keep saying that, of course, we look at Brazil, you bring in something on the table, Russia. Yeah, I think there was a tongue twister that he was talking about rubber roses. I thought you would actually say that the ruble, the ruble rouser. The way also it's losing its gravitas as well. Anyway, the question is then, why is Ethiopia seeking to be part of this? What are they bringing on the table? If you look at all these constituencies, Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, China.
I think to my mind.
Yeah. Why would they want to go to the BRICS?
They are, number one, they have a large population. They have 100 million people, which is something that that there's always been a question: is a large population a boon or a bane? But India and China have proven it over and over again that it's a boon. I mean, it's a plus to have a large population because it creates a consumer base for anything that you produce and any service that you might want to vend. Number two, we cannot ignore the fact that Ethiopia, despite the challenges they're having from a governance, political and security perspective, they are going to be producing 6,000 megawatts from one source. And then thirdly, this country has gone from a very stringent sort of socialist orientation. Now they're going to a free market economy, so their cost of production are going to be relatively low. I mean, you've seen, I was privy to some of the financials of Ethiopian Airlines, and if you look at the profitability of that airlines, it's just mind-boggling. But of course, their cost base are not free market based. So Ethiopia goes to the table with energy, and I think they go with the population and also with the landmass. I don't know what else.
They're even food, wheat. Yeah, they are sufficient in wheat, coffee.
They're also, in a way, the seat of power for Africa.
Seat of power for Africa.
The AU.
Yeah?
AU. The AU is there as well. All right, we want to take a short break just to, of course, pay the bills as well. And then when we circle back, we train our eyes on what is happening with the sugar sector, where we have farmers also who have moved to court to challenge the zoning that the government has proposed right now, and also the issue to do with the crushing of the canes, the stoppage of it. Right, we will look at that. they bump harvest in the sugar sector.
KTN News. Get the whole story.
Sherekea nasi mwezi huu. Channel bomba, sinema na vipindi vya kusisimua. Burudani kamili kwa familia nzima.
That's why I love this stuff.
Sherekea nasi upate nafasi ya kushinda zawadi kila wiki kuanzia 55-inch TVs, fridge na pikipiki. Treat familia na ununue StarTimes decoder madukani kwetu na kwa wauzaji wetu nchi nzima. Lipia subscription yako upate nafasi ya kushinda zawadi kemkem kwenye draw za kila wiki.
It's the best.
Kutoka kwa familia yetu hadi yako. Asante kwa kutukaribisha nyumbani kwenyu. StarTimes, furahia maisha kidijitali.
The Club Kiboko Festival is getting better with each edition, bringing you more fun and entertainment. This August 19th, 2023, all roads lead to the Lindsay Sports Complex, Langata, for a fun day full of games, edutainment, competitions, and lots of giveaways. This August holidays season, join us as we make new memories with friends and family. And who knows, you might even be the winner of the many prizes including scholarships, holidays, gift hampers, and much more. What are you waiting for? Grab your ticket now on ticketsasa.com for just 500 bob for kids and 300 for adults. The Club Kiboko Festival. Miss it, miss out.
KTN News. Get the whole story.
Welcome back. Now, sugar importation is what we want to discuss. From sugar growing regions of the Nyanza and Western Kenya are calling on the government to reconsider the proposal to flood the market with imported sugar. According to the MPs led by Minority Whip Opiyo Wandayi, the move will be detrimental to the region, which heavily relies on sugar, cane farming and milling as its main economic activity, with the legislature equating the move to state economic sabotage. Jimmy Mbogo has more on this.
President William Ruto's proposal to lower the cost of sugar through importation has now hit another hurdle, with members of parliament reading malice on the move. According to the National Assembly Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi, the order by the Agriculture and Food Authority to shut down milling plants in the region will cripple the economy of the region, even as he demanded its immediate revocation.
We demand the immediate lifting of the decree on sugar millers, just like we continue to demand that our farmers be allowed to access subsidized fertilizers as a right.
We have farmers with sugar cane in the farms that are going to rot because the government has closed the factories. This is not acceptable.
Barely a month ago, the Agriculture and Food Authority, AFA, had ordered the temporary closure of sugar milling factories for 4 months over an alleged sugarcane shortage, a move that Opiyo now says was meant to benefit a few businessmen allied to the government. Despite the president's argument that the move was purely meant to cushion Kenyans from the increasing sugar prices that had seen a 2-kilogram bag of sugar retail at over 400 shillings.
AFA has no mandate whatsoever under the law, and you can check, to close sugar factories over alleged cane shortage. Its involvement in this matter is therefore merely a ploy to create shortage of sugar to enable sugar barons in Kenya Kwanza to import the product. The few factories which have been allowed to continue milling on account of having sufficient cane are private mills. One or two private mills which have been stopped from milling are actually owned by people who are at the center of these sugar imports.
It is true the prices have gone up. We have been reluctant to work against farmers by opening importation. the others, everybody refusing to work in accordance with the law. In fact, the reason why many companies have closed shop temporarily is because there is no cane to harvest.
AFA had argued that there would be a deficit in cane production totaling 951,195 tons by June 2023, a claim that is now being disputed by the leaders who have further called for the inclusion of different stakeholders before such a decision that has far-reaching implications are made. Jimmy Bogo, KTN News.
And also with that, we have information that farmers are suing state millers in sugarcane zoning row. Farmers sue state millers in sugarcane zoning row. And it says here that the two sugarcane farmers have moved to court to challenge resolution the government and millers passed on the zoning of cane harvesting. The High Court certified as urgent the case filed by Wilson Kilusu Kimanu, a farmer from Transmara, and James Odhiambo, a cane farmer from Nyando, challenging the move to restrict the harvesting of cane to the region. So we just wanted to open that particular discussion as well with this latest development from the minority leader in the National Assembly.
Zoning of sugar.
We begin with zoning, and we begin, of course, with the with the importation of the sugar.
I think it's just a rapid race to the bottom. The sugar producers or the sugarcane farmers are looking for higher prices for cane that we're not going to deliver more sugar. The whole fundamental of the sugar industry, I think, needs to be looked at. The issue of going to court about removing cane zoning of buying cane from the different factories and so forth and so on is all around people trying to say, if so-and-so gives us, we'll put all our sugar cane in that place. The amount of sugar cane that is available is not enough to actually service all those cane factories. So once they're opened, there's going to be a bid around the cane coming in. Now, if it goes to the highest bid and everybody runs to that place, you're going to find that the cost of producing a kilo of sugar in this country is going to be above that 400 shillings that you're seeing there. First of all, the existing mills are inefficient. That's the first thing. They cannot produce a ton of sugar at the rate at which it is done in Brazil and then transport it here. And if you compare the two, if you're going to take them at factory gate before putting duty, transporting it from Brazil is cheaper than producing it in a factory here. The second thing that you're looking at, so the technology that is present in those factories is the first thing. The economies of scale are not even things you want to talk about from that point of view. Thirdly, the quality of cane that we have in this country in terms of sucrose content is very, very low. I think the sucrose content is something like about 4%, whereas what they're using in places like Kenana in Sudan and places like that is on the range of about 9 to 10% sucrose content, double, right? And also because of where they've been grown, they mature faster. So they're getting, I think, two harvests a year. If you remember, Mumias wanted to grow cane in the Tana Delta. And that was to basically be able to increase the cycle, to get 2 crops a year. But also at that kind of level, they're going to introduce a higher sucrose content cane. So those two together would have given them the advantage of trying to produce and compete with imported sugar. If you look at Brazil and countries that are doing I'll just focus on Brazil. Sugar that we get is not the primary product that they're producing.
Right.
Brazil is actually producing alcohol. With the ethanol bits. Ethanol is what they're producing. So sugar is more of a byproduct. So they can afford to bring it here at a ridiculous price. Yeah. Kenana in Sudan is just a sheer size of the factory that is producing sugar. They've got a huge nuclear farm, and they've got the Nile flowing there, and they've mechanized fully, and they've got an economies of scale. I mean, I think it's close to about 2,000, 3,000 tons a day. So when you look at that, how can we say that by opening up, the places where people can sell their sugar and opening up the mills, we are going to be able to compete
with sugar that can be imported. We'll have to actually now begin to put import restrictions on sugar for our mills to be able to work, which means the price is going to be up at 400, 500 shillings a kilo.
So does it make
it doesn't, my personal view is that the sugar industry, we are fighting for it as a political thing. We really need to just shut everything down, start from scratch. The factories we have are never going to be revived to be competitive in terms of, to be competing against imported sugar. We just need to shut everything down. First of all, remove all the cane we have and get proper cane, and then put up one factory in South Nyanza, one in Western, and one around Kisumu. That's it. That's all you need. And the whole of that, whatever is being served by 3 factories now, can be served by 1.
I mean, why is he left Rift Valley out? I mean,
Rift Valley, yes. There is also when you drop down to Transmara, Transmara area.
He's concentrating on Kisumu.
I know. And Western and Transmara as well.
And you see what's happening. It's according to Azimio as well. Why we don't really have a bumper harvest is the fact that also fertilizer has been a politicized issue. So there's no equal distribution of this fertilizer in the Western region as well. No, but do we laud that move that the cabinet made an approval that the sugar sector should not be privatized? So how do we bring sanity beginning from that particular policy?
I think, Debal, for me, a very, very brief intervention on this. I think Obath is completely spot on. This is a conversation about what is the greater benefit. Do we want the consumer to get the best price? If we want the consumer to get the best price, then the reality is that we don't have the economies of scale to produce at the price that will give them the best price. And we are also, as a country, part of global treaties. I mean, we are part of COMESA, we are part of the African Union, we are part of, we are part of the global trading market infrastructure globally. Number 2 is, what is the benefit that comes from these industries to the farmer, to employees, to the downstream economic activity that they create? Does that outweigh the consumers needing to get a better price? In countries like France, the EU for that matter, I mean, what they have is a policy that allows for blocking of imports when the country is in local production. I used to export French beans to France, but when the French are producing their own beans, they will block the market to allow their farmers to go into production. But I think for me, the reality is that we might have to bite the bullet and start to think whether we do have the competitive and the comparative advantages to continue being in the sugar industry.
So it seems also that efficacy that we had in the sugar industry is waning. So is it a reality check that we need to devolve to something else?
But what I see here is two sides of the coin. And what you see the politics come into play. Because if you look at the kind of farming, you're looking at more of a small-scale farmers. And when you go to the private, you're looking now large farms kind of productions, and you can see where the cabinet is coming. What do we do these small farmers? But the fundamental question we should be addressing ourselves is the farmer better off if we get into times of privatization, and therefore we bring efficiency? Because right now, it will be very difficult to bring efficiency. It's the same coffee sector. I remember with a lot of nostalgia when you have Sosovina. Huge, best quality per tree, they are getting a lot of kilos. We're talking about 15 or so per tree. Right now, is it 3? 3. And that now is because you have gone now to the small scale farming there. And the question you need to ask yourself, how do we breed the two? Because efficiency, economies of scale comes into play. The issue of is sugar from the cane, is it a little business? It's more ethanol, as they pointed out. And probably to ensure, and the movement we heard, and I grew up in coffee, is a cooperative movement. So we get all this, and then we have us taking to a common, and where the private sector now comes into play. Private sector still have a role to play. There are cases. Look at what Vimasha has done. They are now going to have the producing oil through the palm tree in Africa and in Kenya. And it's through that private sector that have now engaged the farmers in terms of now getting the raw materials. It's a sector I don't know how many years we have to talk about the sugar industry.
Indeed.
It's inefficient. You look, even what
So should we close this chapter of sugar? And just declare that Kenyans, we take Nduvia, even with your coffee as well. We are a Nduvia nation.
We need to
we just,
all we need to do.
Okay. I want us just to wind up.
I like that, the Nduvia nation.
On the BAL, 3 things I like about the BETTER program. One is productivity, aggregation, and efficiency. In this particular case of sugar and sugarcane, my thinking is, and I agree with the aspect of technology, more technology being used. I remember learning from Barbados that per acre, what they get out of for sugar is about 5 times what we get. Why are we not taking advantage of skills sharing? In as much as, and by the way, I was saddened to learn that, I don't know if it's true, that Kenya doesn't have a single embassy or mission in the Caribbean. But that's a story for another day. There is so much that in my view we could share, even with Brazil. By extension, Brazil, given that, has got the largest fraction of Africans out of Africa. So why is it that we are not sharing technology and skills? But in terms of, while transformation of the sugar sector is required, I rarely agree with Honorable Wandai in this regard. This is one of the few instances I agree with him, except I wouldn't go as far as calling it economic sabotage. But in terms of just shutting down the factories without without checking, due regard to, what happens to the equipment that's there, the workers that are there, their families that rely on it. My thinking is government needs to consult more with the major stakeholders and professionals in resuscitating the sugar sector. But the truth is that politically, maybe part of it is also a mistake on our part as people of Nyanza. We've, to a large extent, over the past 50 years, been on the wrong side of government and have suffered as a consequence.
Right.
I think a little more of engagement, honest engagement, and look at sugar, the outcomes. When Nyanza wins, the whole country wins.
The deputy president said, tell your people to register for fertilizer. Register to be farmers when they get fertilizer.
They will register. I know they're complaining the distribution is not happening on the side. Yes. Well, we need to wind up. But before I wind up, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know, Kenyans love holidays. And there is this particular bill that now is being fronted by Thangwa. He says more time off for workers will boost local tourism. Kenyans currently enjoy 12 public holidays a year. And so we need 4 more days. 4 days public holiday weekends. We are a working nation. Don't you think we need to have this? And by the way, even as you're thinking about going for that holiday, yeah, you can see, and I can see your nice jeans, but the US and Canada, I'm learning that our jeans are risk. They're a choking risk. I don't know, the production that we are actually having here of our jeans exported to US and Canada, they're a choking risk.
Debal, I think there are some times when less is more. I think there are some things just worth not talking about. I mean, we just need to work hard. I mean, we forget about that.
So forget about this bill.
According to me.
Okay.
No, I'm passionate about this game. This is a great thing.
It's a great thing.
You can tell from his shirt he's about to go to market.
I guess Debal.
No. I think. Let me just.
Sure.
I may put it that way. I have worked in 3 countries, whereby, in fact, they have what are called bridging days.
Yeah. Bridging days.
Bridging days. Yeah. Whenever a public holiday happens within a day of the weekend, either before or after, they've normally taken the bridging day. Yeah. But the bridging day is not a day that is given by the state. They take your day and put it there. So the bridging day, if it happens, is taken from your leave. It is not given for free. And the only reason they do that is that on those days, some companies choose to let people not come because one day guys will come in with a hangover and then continue, whatever it is. So it's not a productive day for some companies, others are productive. So if the 2 of them are not working together, you may not necessarily get the full productivity on that particular day. So the countries that have done it, but not by giving a free holiday from the government. It comes from your holiday. So if, say, for example, Jamhuri Day, yeah, is on a Thursday, on that year, because it is known, the government will actually gazette so many days of leave are going to be forfeited for these days.
Yeah.
And that way, effectively, you don't lose productivity from that point of view. Yeah, so I think there is, whilst it may sound whatever, if it is done properly, from that point of view,
if you look on the other side,
will,
the flip side of it,
it will,
it's burnout.
Quite persuasive.
I think what Wazanga was saying, and most countries they do that. I know in the States, the only day celebrated on the day falls is 4th of July.
Yeah.
It's come on a Thursday, they'll do on a Thursday. Any other holiday is either a Friday
or a Monday.
And I think that's what Wazanga was talking
and this
about.
jurisdiction, they tend to work even lesser days. You'll find they work for 3 days in a week. It's only, in some of this.
And my take, it's, you're there on a Monday or Tuesday when it's a holiday. Then you step up, then the Thursday. I think what he's saying, let's push it to a Monday or a Friday.
Are they working less and producing more?
My take,
and then we are here, there's a diminishing return.
Productivity, that's all it is.
My take would be that the countries that are already advanced, they've progressed. There are luxuries that probably we cannot afford. But allow me to bring the technology side of things. It could be that
holiday again.
People could have holiday but working virtually. The bar,
That's not a holiday.
No, if it allows somebody to travel, if somebody wanted
on the golf course.
How do you do your family to Mombasa and you're busy there doing all the meetings? If somebody is here.
Well, usually, if somebody wanted to travel, say to their village, the fact that technology is possible, you could still be working to that extent. But as a working nation, I think we need less of free public holidays than more.
All right.
But the figures you remember the latest
energy?
No. Figures of energy. Let's just rest
the
for now.
President Kenyatta used to be on a busy working holiday. So
we need to wind up. Let's get your closing remarks, Dr. Shema Chodha, briefly. Closing remarks.
No, my remarks just to confirm the figures. For Niger, it's 51 kilowatt hour per capita. Compared to Uganda's 300 kilowatt per hour. Kenya's 167, and USA 12,914 kilowatt hour per capita, comparable to Europe. And yet the uranium utilized comes from Niger, a good part of it. So for me, that's an issue we really need to look at.
Right. All right. Let's hear from Gituro as well.
I'll close on page 15 of the Standard. Interesting plavra there about Museveni. It says that he's a tough guy who doesn't mince his words, saying what he means and meaning what he says. Going to what my brother has been telling us after execution. And it's a serious issue when you see the signals coming from, there are certain conditions which goes to our values. Our values are more important than any other condition.
Right. Okay. Patrick Obath.
For me, my party shot today on this word execution. If the national and county governments could take one theme a month and spend the whole month working on that one theme, can you imagine how many things would have been corrected in 5 years? I think we need to change the way we think.
Thank you. Right. Finally, Kiprono Kitone.
Yeah, just 3 very brief concluding remarks. One is kudos to the Council of Governors, to Governor Waiguru for the great job that they've done. And I think there's a lot that's happening. And politics is a very thankless thing, and nobody perhaps takes time to appreciate them. But devolution is working. Also to my governor in Trans Nzoia, George Natembeya, who's doing an amazing job in the last 1 year that he's been in office. Secondly, the forthcoming climate summit in Nairobi, we hope that it'll be a time that the industrialized nations of the West will agree to honor their debts, particularly on the carbon emissions. And finally, to the President for the great job that they're doing to try and revive the economy.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate.
Yes.
Thank you, Shema. I really appreciate your input this morning. Thank you, Kip, for seeing you after a long time as well. And also, as we're winding up, still on that particular bill, I just want to read something from the wise man. He said, "I have seen all the works under the sun, and indeed, all is vanity and chasing after the wind." So, thank you guys. You've been watching Sokoni. News Diary is up next.
Keep trouble.